my lords, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to episode number 3 of the Call of Cthulu Rimworld series. Now before we get started, there's been a pretty major change here, although on the face of it may not look too different from where we left off in episode number 2. Now, I noticed and I realised during some playtesting and a separate save file using the same setup that I have here, that I accidentally set the ideology as non-fluid, so we weren't able to accumulate reformation points, therefore we weren't able to ever adjust our ideology, and that was, one of the whole cornerstones of this playthrough, to be able to do that and to see the development over time. Now, I did toy with the idea of just continuing as it was. However, as I said, I do like the whole progression and being able to see the progression and the changes over time. So what I have done is I've restarted the save file. We are on the same planet setup, and I'll just show that quickly here. So the planet is the same, as we can see. We have some old favourites such as Big Rabbit Reach and Purple Wombat Mountains and the likes. The only difference is the factions have been spawned in different locations, but I've gone ahead and selected the same starting location as we did previously. I've also gone into the dev mode at the start and just rebuilt whatever we had previously, and I've tried to get it exactly as it was before. The only differences now are this hasn't been quite as mined out as it had been previously, nor has our stockpile zone, and our stockpiles are different to what they were. We've also not progressed as far through the date. The other major change is we no longer have an obelisk for our cults to get inspired by. Instead we have the variety of the obelisk, which is the eerie tree. And as we can see, Gabe is on his way now to investigate this tree and put together the grimoire that we saw in the last episode. So I have had to retrace my steps a little, but I have tried to recreate it as faithfully as possible. As I said, however, the food situations are going to be a bit different, as are the amassed resources that we have on hand. They don't quite reflect what we had in episode 2. I've also set Gabe and Q to be lovers, because obviously that is something that did happen in the last episode, and I want to continue with that, obviously. Other than that, everything is pretty much of a muchness. The other two big changes, or I suppose it's one change really, is using the Dubs Mint menu mod. I have now swapped over to the Dubs Mint menu research screen, as we can see, and I've gone through and fine-tuned that, and I've done the same with the architect screen as well, but that's purely cosmetic. It doesn't affect gameplay in any way. So let's get started then, with Gabe on his way to investigate the eerie tree and compose the grimoire, and that'll leave us pretty much where we left off last time around. Okay, so Gabe has investigated the eerie tree and is now going to go ahead and write the grimoire, which will be used to construct the Occult Research bench in the near future. Hopefully we can get that set up today. We'll probably use this spare room here. There's the grimoire. It does say the same thing as it did in episode 2, so I'll not go over that again. And we'll just now resume, not where we left off obviously, because things aren't quite the same. For example, the wildlife on the map is different than it was in episode 2, and we have still yet to have our first raid. Just to get us back to roughly where we were, I did change the storyteller settings to peaceful, just so I could get pretty much to a parallel as to where we were last time without any major interruptions. And just to verify that I have reset that back to normal, if we go to the storyteller settings, we can see we are on Strive to Survive once again. So that's been reset to what it was previously. The other thing I've done, I've reset the colonists to their initial starting traits and their starting skills. Any level ups that may have occurred in episode 1 or 2 have obviously not been reflected here. I just went for the default starting, and I just copied that straight off of the character creation screen that we saw in episode 1. Ah, yes, this is the other thing that I hadn't been prompted to do up until now, which was the settlement name and the faction name. We'll use the same settlement name, which I believe was Innsmouth, and for our faction name, again, we're going to go for something. I'm just going to hit random a few times now and then settle on one that I quite like. Okay, so after hitting random a few times, I was getting a bit bored of it, so I've come up with my own name, which is Northeast Miskatonic, and obviously that is a nod to the world setting that Lovecraft employed, so that's what we're going for this time around. I can't remember what it was last time, not that it really affects anything, of course, and I think that name chosen there does have a nice Lovecraftian theme to it. I've now queued up the production of the Forbidden Knowledge Centre, which is essentially the research station for all things occult. You can't do normal research here, it is only the occult research technologies that are available. So Q is going to go ahead and build that now, as we can see. Once we've got that up and running, we can start the occult research and start making inroads down that path. There we go, so Q has constructed the Occult Research Centre there, and that's triggered the event Occult Beginnings. Stirred with new possibilities, your colonists have caught some interest in recent occult events. Their beliefs can be tracked in the Needs menu. This belief will slowly decrease over time. Using occult research, you can strengthen the cult and the beliefs of your colonists until they found a cult of their own. So to do that then, we're going to head over to our research screen now. And using the filters here, we're going to go for the occult research. And the first thing we can do, I've hidden all the locked ones, or the ones that need, or are hidden behind other researchers. So there are more available, but the first thing we have to do is decipher strange symbols. So let's make a start on that. As we see, that's 50 research points. Now the problem with doing occult research is your colonists' sanity will slowly start to deteriorate. And if it gets too high, that can lead to mental breakdowns. However, the trade-off is the more research they do, the more occult-minded they become, as explained in the little window just there. So it's a good idea to balance it through all available colonists, just to make sure everybody is occult-minded. There is a chance that if their occult-mindedness, which is this bar here, drops too low, then they will turn hostile to the members of the cult, and that obviously brings its own challenges and problems. So Gabe's the first to start the research, and as we can see, we get the notification. He does feel like something is watching him. As we can see here, he is affected by minor sanity loss, which increases his pain, his consciousness, hearing, moving, manipulation, but more importantly, his mental break threshold. So you have to be careful and balance that out as best as you can so you don't overburden one particular colonist and then risk a mental breakdown. Okay, on the back of that we now have our first raid. Well, I suppose technically our second raid, but since I had to restart, it is the first raid for this save file. And this is a group of tribes people from the Abrunio Pact, and they are attacking immediately. Just one of them, and they're only armed with a steel club, so I think Izzy will be able to fend them off quite comfortably. So we'll draft Izzy immediately. Izzy, Q. We'll draft Q immediately and send her down to meet our assailant. While she's doing that, we can see the research of deciphering strange symbols has been completed. Deciphers some of the material's language to make further research possible. Now if we go to the research screen, we can see now this has actually unlocked a few extra research options for us. And the first thing we're going to go for is probe occult deities. That will unlock one of, I think it's 6 deities, and they will, you can choose which one you wish to worship, and you can change it at any time. And the deities do provide their own boons and benefits, so depending on your current circumstance, it is wise to sometimes change it up. In the meantime, Q has engaged and made her first few shots against CB Born. As we can see, he does appear to be magically gifted, and he has used a magical attack there on Q. So we want to be careful of that. If we see him trying to power up a magical attack, we will move out of the location. And Bourne has been incapacitated. Let's just quickly take a look at him here. He is a Death Knight, he is greedy, and he is ugly. The high crafting skill is quite interesting. However, the greedy trait would be a bit of a concern. Besides that, we are also just starting out. We don't have anywhere we could house a prisoner. Oh, we could house him in here, I suppose, if we wanted to. Do you know what? I think we will go ahead and capture him. So let's first of all put ourselves a sleeping spot in our research room. It will do for now. We can give him a proper prison cell a little bit later on. So if you could capture him for me. He's bleeding out in 6 hours, so we do have time to get him back and tend to his wounds before he bleeds out. And then we'll see about getting him to join our colony. Having a magically gifted colonist would be quite interesting to pursue. Okay, a cult has begun to form in your colony. Izzy thinks that you should give this cult a name. What should it be called? Church of the Bloody Tongue? Maybe. In fact, yeah, we'll go for that. Church of the Bloody Tongue sounds quite sinister. What we'll do now, we'll set his prisoner into action. First of all, we'd like to convert him to our ideology. Okay, as we can see, Gabe is now suffering from severe sanity loss, so I think at this point in time we'll swap it out so somebody else does the research. And I think we'll have Q take care of the research. She does need a bit of treatment, as we can see. A poor creature has been slain and left by the wayside. The mysterious death offers no witnesses. So we have a dead cat in the corner of the map. Doesn't really mean much, but it's a bit of flavour to the series. Okay, Izzy, could you please prioritise tending to Q for me? Remember, she was hit by a magical attack during the battle, and it has done quite a bit of damage to her liver, as we can see, at least the left lobe of her liver, and her arm has sustained a fair bit of damage as well. Both have been tended to now. Alright, so all our colonists now have pelt coats, which is going to insulate them quite nicely. As we can see, they're insulated to around about -30 degrees each. What about Bourne, actually? Because what we don't really want is him to develop hypothermia, especially if we're going to want to try and recruit him into the fold at some point. We do have enough blue fur to create another pelt coat for him. And if he's going to join our colony, that's probably not a bad idea. So we'll queue up a manual one there. This is 1 per colonist, which has now been satisfied. Obviously, Bourne is not classed as a colonist, so it doesn't factor into that calculation. In fact, we've had a cultist joined. A villager named Amy has arrived and is joining the colony. She's a Navy scientist. Well, that quite fits in with the theme that we've gone for here. And she is obsessed in joining your new cult. Let's take a look at Amy here. First of all, her gear. Not bad cold protection. Could be better, of course. So I think the next pelt coat will be hers. In terms of her biography, she is magically gifted, which is good. A psychopath, which fits in with the whole cultist theme. And she is steadfast, so she has a lower mental break threshold. Decent at the old melee. High intellectual skill. Decent cooking and animal handling skill as well, so I think she will be quite a useful addition to the colony. So we'll give her a sleeping spot just here. For now, Izzy and Amy will have to share a room while we're still setting up, but that's no problem. She has been initiated into the cult, Church of the Bloody Tongue. First thing we want to do, of course, is set up Amy's work priorities, and as always, firefighting and patient take a high priority. Doctoring we'll set to priority level 3. Hauling level 1. She can handle the magical research. That fits in with her magically gifted biography trait. Cooking level 6, and Gabe has level 6, so they can share the cooking duties between them, I think, there. What else? Construction level 3. Well, I might have you help out, but as a medium sort of priority. Research level 1, same for all of our colonists. Crafting and the likes you're not really good at, so we'll forego that. To compensate so you're not sat idle too often, we'll set hauling and cleaning to level 1. And that should give you enough to keep you relatively busy. And what I'm going to do now is just quickly check all of our colonists' cult-mindedness, and whoever is quite low, might have them prioritise a bit of research. As you can see, Gabe and Amy are full. Izzy and Q are not, so one of those will take care of the research for the next few days, just to get their cult-mindedness as high as possible. Okay, so we finished the research of Probe Occult Deities, and that has unlocked the deity Shub-Niggurath. His titles are Black Goat of the Woods with 1,000 Young and Lord of the Wood. His domains are Dark, Young, Fertility and Transformation. A brief description there. Ever their praises, and abundance to the Black Goat of the Woods, La Shub-Niggurath, La Shub-Niggurath, the Black Goat of the Woods with 1,000 Young, and that is taken from the H.P. Lovecraft work The Whisperer in the Darkness. So Shub-Niggurath is a perverse fertility deity, so small creatures are continually spat forth by the monstrosity, which are either consumed into the miasmatic form, or escape to some monstrous life elsewhere. So we can't do much with this yet, because we first need to construct an altar, but we can now dedicate our cult to the worship of Shub-Niggurath. So what we want to do to be able to do that is, of course, research the altar. Only 150 research points, not too bad at all, and that does unlock, as we can see, the cult altar, and that is the focal point for our cult worship. So let's get that started now. So Izzy has been initiated into the cult there, as we can see. His cult-mindedness has passed the 70% threshold. How is his sanity? Only initial levels of sanity loss, so he can continue researching safely for a short while. We need to get Q initiated into the cult, of course, so she will take over the research perhaps tomorrow. Before you head off to sleep there, Q, I will have you just construct that heater just to ensure Bourne stays at least reasonably warm. You don't need to set it to such a high temperature, of course. What's his minimum temperature threshold again? Let's just verify that. -8. Well, I think we'll set it to 0 degrees. 1 degree is fine. That'll give us a small threshold against his negative temperature once the power does shut off, which it looks like it's going to do quite soon. So he shouldn't immediately become hypothermic, and we might have enough time for the wind to pick back up to keep this supplied with power. So Q has fully healed of her wounds, which is fantastic. And once she's dealt with Bourne here, I will have her occupy the research table. There we go, so that's now all 4 colonists initiated into the cult. So it is a balancing act when it comes to researching at this research station, of course. And it's one you have to micromanage, lest you risk a mental breakdown, which is something we obviously want to avoid as much as possible. And that is the altar research now completed as well. So if we go onto the research screen now, I think the next thing we're going to go for is ritual attire. That way we can craft the Cthulhu mask and the shrouded mask, as well as the vestments. And then we can assign our colonists, or 2 of them, to the 2 roles that are active within our religion. Alright, we've had a couple of donkeys join the colony. How many? It is 2 of them. Of course, there's one thing for that, they will be slaughtered. We're in no position to keep wild animals at the moment. And we have a quest available, the Solitary Baroness. Given that we're a cult, I think it makes logical sense for a cult to not want to interact too heavily with their neighbours. While it does mean we're not going to be able to advance into the Empire as quickly and therefore unlock the psycasting abilities, I think it fits in better with the story, so we're going to delete and disregard that quest entirely. Okay, so we've skipped forward about half a day, As you can see here, I've planned out quite a large excavation to the side of this mountain here, and this large room will form our church. It will serve as both our ideological church, so the sect of Eldritch, as well as our cultist church, the Church of the Bloody Tongue. So at some point, once we've got it all excavated, this is where we're going to put our cultist altar and various pews, as well as obviously the ideological constructions that are open to us under the sect of Eldritch, such as the Chthonian logo, a few carvings and the likes. As we can also see here, I've constructed or queued up the construction of a large wall here just to block out this access point to our base. That will funnel all raiders and hostiles in through this little choke point here, and this will provide a nice defensible location for our colonists to form a line of defense, obviously. Okay, either the truth is too horrible for Izzy, or he is becoming empowered with a sudden realization. Even so, he has started to abandon any strange or occult ideas. This happened because of his poor mood, and the final straw was darkness. Now, as we can see, what this has done, oh, it's dropped his cult mindedness a little bit. That might drop even, yes, it's dropping, as we can see, 5% or so every couple of seconds. So eventually, I imagine this will drop all the way to 0. Do we have anybody with a decent social skill who could attempt to calm him down? Yes, Q could do it. Okay, sadly Q was unsuccessful in calming Izzy down, so his cult mindedness is going to drain away, which means he will be the one doing the research for the next few days just to get him back into the cult. There we go, that's one of the things that can happen. Izzy has begun plotting against the local cult Church of the Bloody Tongue, and that is because his cult mindedness has dropped below this 30% threshold here. You can see the little marker for that, at which point he has now become hostile to the cult and to members of the cult. Okay, Q is going to try and calm him down once again, but again was unsuccessful, unfortunately, which is a shame. So that's Izzy out of commission for a short while. Bourne's certainty in his own ideology continues to drop there. 15% per interaction, it seems, is the rough average. So it shouldn't take much longer for him to become a member of our ideology, at which point we can then start recruiting him to the colony. And Muffalo, in fact all of the Muffalo have gone manhunter now against Q during her latest hunting expedition. So we're going to have to micromanage this. Keep them away from the colony, of course, as Q is the only colonist we have with ranged weaponry. Okay, it looks like we have overcome this little battle. There are 2 Muffalos left standing, but they are bleeding out in 4 and 6 hours. So a couple more hits on either of those should see them perish. That's one down, and that's them all down. We have a transport pod crash. A forester named Beryl is crashing in a transport pod nearby. If she survives the impact, she'll be badly wounded. She is from the seafaring townsfolk of Grey Cactus. So she could join if we rescue her, or she could choose not to. Let's have a look at her biography. She has an annoying voice, which is obviously annoying. Incapable intellectual, which isn't too much of a drawback. We have plenty of people who can research for us. The quick sleeper trait is quite nice. I like the plants and the animal handling skills there, and the flame of passions in construction and cooking. So I think we will go ahead. We do have a sleeping spot for medical purposes, so I think we will have somebody come out here and attempt to rescue her. If she joins, fantastic. If she does not, well, we can always arrest her to make sure she does join. Now, we could obviously capture her outright, but that would trigger hostilities between our faction and the coastal village that she is a member of. And while we're still getting ourselves established out here, I think it's probably a good idea to fly under the radar as much as we can. So we'll rescue her the better way, or the normal way if you will, and hope that she does decide to join. Izzy has snapped out of his mental breakdown, as we can see, which is good. So the first thing he's going to do, after he's had something to eat of course, and boosted his recreation bar, is he is going to do some research. Alright, so Beryl has developed an infection in her leg. So we'll have Izzy come over and immediately prioritise tending to Beryl to attempt to offset the infection there. A decent 10 quality, 57%. Let's see now over the next few days how her immunity percentage increases compared to the infection spread percentage. Okay, so the first round of treatment for Beryl's infection has just expired, so we can tend her once again. In the meantime, while that was developing, I have had Izzy go out and harvest a bit of heal root. Hopefully we can now use this herbal medicine to treat the infection, because as we can see, it's a very close run thing between the infection spread and the immunity gain percentage. So we'll see what that impact has now. I've also expanded our initial little workshop here, as we can see. Well, I say workshop, it's a bit of a mixture of rooms here. So we now have a stonecutter's table, a regular research bench, and obviously our bone butcher's table there. I've also enclosed the little latrine here, so our colonists no longer are intruded upon when they're, you know, using that, which is always an important thing. What I'm going to do now is set up a stone cutting order. And we're going to do this forever. We're just going to drop them on the floor for the time being. And let's just reduce the ingredient radius to something like that. That way our colonists won't wander too far to get the next stone chunk to be turned into blocks. Yeah, another transport pod crash. A machine collector named Boomer is crashing nearby. She is from southern Hatzibedium. Let's go have a look here. Nope. She is not joining the colony. However, she will be used to sustain our colony, as we do have the cannibalism is permitted precept as part of our ideology, so our colonists will not mind consuming her flesh. Okay, so our local hare has gone mad hunter now. I think we should be able to handle that quite comfortably, but we'll get Q drafted and head down there to meet it and head it off at the pass. There we go. That's that little problem taken care of quite comfortably without any major dramas. As you can see, we've also now got proper beds for our colonists, including our prisoner and our, I wouldn't say captive just yet. And that is ritual attire also now researched. As we can see, about halfway through constructing our little chapel or church. I think for now that's enough occult research. The cult-mindedness of Izzy has increased now to over halfway, so he's no longer openly hostile against the cult. Any few sermons should have him join the fold. So now we can start doing some proper research, if you will. So now let's just go back to all and then decide what we want to go for next. I think the first thing we'll go for is batteries. That's going to make sense. That way we can store some power, of course. So we'll research that now. And that will take place at the regular research bench over here. At this point, we can now have Gabe resume researching. Now that we're going to focus on some normal research projects for a while. We have some weapons dropping down here. What do we have? A rhinoceros leather elephant tusk. That's interesting. An elephant tusk made out of rhinoceros leather. It's a bit unusual. And a syntholine shiv. We'll allow those. We might make use of them. If not, we can always sell them onto a passing trade caravan at some point. But given that we have unlocked the ritual attire, what we can do now is we can start making the headgear. For example, the Cthulhu mask and the shrouded cultist hood here. So let's queue up 2 of those, 1 of each of course. And we shall also queue up the vestments. So the tentacled vestments, and the other one was the traditional vestments. We have 303 units of blue fur, and I think that's what we're going to use for these, of course. So let's, in fact, we'll get the vestments done first of all, like so. And we want these to be constructed out of blue fur. These cost 100 a piece, I believe. Okay, now this one consists of 80 units. So that's 108 units of our blue fur spoken for. As we can see, the infection that is currently gripping Beryl has now spread to fatal levels, and it is spreading ever so slightly faster than her immunity percentage. So it looks very unlikely that she will survive, which is unfortunate because she could have been a good addition to the colony. And indeed, there we go. Beryl has now passed away. Well, so be it. We'll have other opportunities in the future, I'm sure, to recruit colonists to our colony and to our cult, so no big deal. The last thing we'll end on here today is that Q is pregnant, which is good. That means we're going to have an extra colonist for free in the next year or so. So it will be interesting to see how that pans out. How's Bourne getting on just before we end? Down to 43%, so we're slowly making progress with him. At which point, as I said, we'll attempt to recruit him into the colony itself. So we'll end it here today. As I said, I've had to do a lot of catch-up due to the issue with the ideology in the initial attempt at this series. But I think we've pretty much caught up to where we were, and in fact exceeded where we were last time around. Food stocks are looking very good. We've got a decent amount of production facilities installed, and we've made a start on the occult research as well. So I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider hitting that like button down below. It does help get the video out there to a wider audience. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel as well, if you haven't already done so, please consider doing so, as that does help the channel growth. Other than that, all that remains for me to say is, as always, ladies and gentlemen, take very good care of yourselves. It's ta-ta for now.